Is it? Is it recording? Hey, hey, hey. Okay, it's recording.
So you can
Okay.
tell from, okay,
Yeah. It's good. You like it?
excellent,
Okay.
excellent.
I'm glad that you are comfortable. Okay.
Very,
Hi, is this Mr. Will? And this is Ayla Nguyen. I'm a junior student at Gettysburg College, and I'm working on a digital humanity fellowship project about the Vietnam War and how it is remembered differently in the United States and in Vietnam. So I read your oral history interview and was really moved by the stories that you have shared, especially the part about, spending Christmas in 1967 in a foxhole. So yeah, I wish I have an image because I can imagine it in my head and it's stuck in with
I
me.
do have an image and I brought it with me.
Oh, really? You brought it with you?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, that is amazing. If you could like share it later with us, we would be really appreciate with that.
Well, good.
Yeah. So, for my project, oh, you have it right here?
I have it right here.
Amazing. Let me see.
And
Yeah.
in fact, it still has the mold.
Oh,
That was,
the foxhole?
actually, uh, that was,
Let me show
oh
it
yeah,
on the camera. I was like, yeah,
yeah,
can you say something?
that's a bunker
A bunker?
at the edge of a
Oh,
area. It's called the perimeter.
oh.
And it was December 1967.
December 1967.
And the
There's
location was north of Kontum,
not.
village of Kontum, between Kontum and Dak To.
And then what is this?
That was that was a operation on the Laotian Cambodian border,
Mm-hmm.
and that was artillery piece
Yeah.
supporting troops in that mountain range.
Oh, can I take a picture of it later?
Sure, sure, no
Oh,
problem.
amazing. That would be amazing. So, for my project, I'm looking at like different types of memory and then official narratives and personal stories. So it will be three parts. The first part is official narratives from the textbook and from the government, how they teach the kids and the students. And the second one is personal memory, which I collected your interview, and I have Stephen Warner's collections, and I have some other people's interviews, and then the Vietnamese soldiers interviews as well. And the third one is I have is the digital and social media interview, how because this is Gen Z world right now, so all the kids are like learning, like they like learning from social media and digital memory, from YouTube, from TikTok. So that is my third part. So I'm especially interested in the contrast between what in the textbook versus what people like you actually experience, and also how veterans make sense of the war now and years later. So if you're open to it, I'd love to ask a few questions about your experience and
Sure.
how your thinking changed during and after the war and what you hope younger generation will take away from it. So let's start our interview right
All
now.
right, excellent, excellent.
Yeah. So in your oral history, you mentioned that most students at Gettysburg were not really aware of the war in the early 60s. Was there a moment when that changed for you personally?
That's a good question. Yes, as we talked before, Gettysburg in the mid 60s, early 60s was a sleepy, quiet little community. The college reflected that. Uh, ROTC was very popular on campus. You either had gymnasium, gym, or ROTC. So we had Air Force and Army ROTC. So every Tuesday, a lot of students were dressed in uniforms for ROTC activities. But the war really came home when one of the ROTC instructors, Captain Valerius, was killed in Vietnam, and all of a sudden, the war that appeared so far away and only on TV screens suddenly hit home when we realized that this young soldier had just lost his wife and left a wife and two children. So I think that was, for me personally, and for many of us, a real shock, a real shock.
Hmm. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Um, so you also talk about losing trust in the government after things like My Lai and Kent State. What have you processed that shift the in like what have you processed that shift?
Okay, you mentioned My Lai
Hmm. And Kent State?
and what? I'm sorry,
Kent State?
Tet.
Yeah.
Um, I was far removed. Uh, I was stationed in Germany when the My Lai massacre was publicized, and like I'm sure 90% of the people of the United States, as well as those of us in the military, were shocked at that war crime. Uh, Ugly incident, uh, no excuse for it. The cover up made it even worse.
Mm.
And it was a dramatic shock to most of us. Um, as far as Tet was, I was an R&R in
Mm.
Australia when Tet occurred, and the paid flight crews would not fly back to Tansanut. So instead of spending 3 days in Australia, we spent 7 days in Australia. So that for me was uh, nothing like what it was for troops on the ground. And as far as the meaning of PET, it was a shock to the nation that uh, when the country was being told that things were going well in Vietnam, all of a sudden there was a huge and dramatic attack. And although quote unquote the U.S. prevailed, it was a big shock to the American public to see everything from fighting in Hue to fighting on the front steps of the American embassy in Saigon.
Mm.
So Tet was a seminal event, no doubt about it.
Yep. Thank you for sharing all that. That's just some of my follow-up questions, but I think we should go like slower now, like from the opening. So you say you joined the military to ROTC, right? So what were your expectations at the time about what you'll be doing or contributing to during the time you joined?
Well, I think those of us who continue with the ROTC program had an idea that what we were going to be doing. I don't think we realized in 64 and 65 how quickly the war was going to escalate, and the fact that almost 3 million American soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines would be uh, in Vietnam. I guess it was 2.8 million, the numbers. But pardon me if that phone bothers you.
That's
But
all.
that I think we all knew by 66 that some of us were going to be going to Vietnam, that's for sure.
Mm. Oops. Is it okay? Yeah,
Pardon me just for a second to see if that's a routine call or what.
I got you.
Just a routine call.
It's just a routine call. Okay. Thank you so much. So was there a specific moment in Vietnam that changed how you understood what the war really was?
Oh, um, I think the loss of a friend uh, is a important part. And I lost a good friend in Dak To, named was Buck Thompson, and we shared the stories and foxholes, fighting positions, for a good while, and he was killed November 19th, 1967, and that left a major impression on me. But the entire year was an eye-opening event to anybody who served in Vietnam.
Mm, yeah, I'm so sorry for your loss. It's must be tough for that. So looking back, how do you feel about the way the war was presented to the public at the times, like through news or official statements or college campuses like Gettysburg? You say it's not very like present on campus, but is there any type of presence that you can notice on campus or anywhere, yeah, at that time?
I think I'm not speaking for everybody, but I think when we were there, we were not aware how the war was being presented at home. But when you return, obviously, television coverage and news coverage was for the most part negative. Um, I think the media in general was against U.S. forces participation in Vietnam, and that influenced the country's perception of what was going on. And I don't think anyone could say that the media coverage was neutral. It was pretty much mostly the negative side of the war.
So, like, how about before you were drafted, like, or you were like going, is there any media at all, or there's none?
Personally, I don't think I spent much time watching TV
Mm-hmm.
in 65 or 66. And then going in 66 again, I knew there was a war going on and I knew I would be involved in it, but I don't think I did a whole lot of reflection on it, other than the fact that I was a soldier and was probably going to be going to Vietnam.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, do you feel like it was like the war was fully reckoned with in the United States, or does it still feel unresolved to you?
I'm sorry, I missed that.
Yeah. So, do you feel like the war was ever fully reckoned with in the United States, or does it still feel unresolved to you?
Ooh, uh, the war, the war is defined here in the United States as far as U.S. participation from 1965 to 1973. And I was only in the United States 2 years of that period. I was in Korea, I was in Germany, and I was in Vietnam during that period. So I can't really speak too much about how the U.S. perception of it was, because I was only here in the United States about a year and a half of that period.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the perception most people had was what they saw on television, and it was the first war that was so heavily televised, and that couldn't help but influence people.
Mm-hmm.
And there's nothing pretty about war, and most of the coverage was of the combat and the aftermath, and it's not a particularly pleasant sight.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, what moment from your time in Vietnam do you find yourself thinking about the most now? You want to share?
Um, since it's been so long ago,
Mm-hmm.
Um, you think of the interpersonal friendships you had.
Mm-hmm.
Um, some of the details get a little fuzzy, but I can't say I dwell a lot on that one fairly short period of my life.
Mm-hmm. That's nice. Yeah, so you mentioned the Montagnats, like, and how complex the situation was. So did your experience with them change how you view the war or Vietnam as a whole?
Well, um, so much has come out after the war, uh, naturally. Historians look at it, uh, people reflect on it, and I think the the initial idea of supporting the U.S. involvement in Vietnam has slowly become recognized as a mistake,
Mhm.
and it certainly divided the country. And the impact of the war did not end with the withdrawal of U.S. forces. The tragedy of the war continued to influence U.S. foreign policy, certainly the military, and certainly the American public for many, many years. And I think that was the lesson of Vietnam, that the decision to commit U.S. forces overseas in any operation has to be carefully examined and carefully thought out. And that, I think, is the best, or is the biggest lesson of that period that most of us took away.
Yeah, thank you. So back to the Christmas 1967 that you spent in a foxhole in a mountaintop. So what was going through your mind that night?
Well, as you said, it was more of a bunker than a foxhole, but
Yeah,
it was
bunker.
basically sandbags and
Yeah.
built up. First of all, there was no fighting.
Mm,
There was a truce. Um, uh, I don't think many of us reflected on Christmas at home and so on. You were there.
mm-hmm,
You got hot meals instead of having to eat cold rations.
mm,
It was a 7 or 10 day break. I can't remember exactly what it was,
mm,
but it was a chance to take a shower, uh, sleep when you wanted to sleep, get up when you wanted to get up. That was a nice break from the routine.
mm.
But yeah, obviously Christmas has many memories for many people. You weren't with your family, and you just made the best of it. But
Yeah,
yeah, that was about it.
yeah, that's what interesting. So how do you emotionally handle the transition back to normal life after serving?
Well, that's a real good one. I've often thought about it in that if if you stayed in the army um, after a tour in Vietnam, you know, you came back to a society where everybody was either going or had been or going back again. So being a soldier and having served in Vietnam was, if you stayed in the military, was not a hard transition. But if, for example, here in Gettysburg, um, the Gettysburg community lost, I believe, 17 young men in Vietnam from Adams County. And if you were from Biglerville or Aaronsville, small towns in Adams County, had come back from Vietnam, that was a different story because you took off your uniform and it was difficult to transition back into the life you had. And if you were 17 or 18 or 19 and came back 2 years later, 3 years later, that was a hard transition because people didn't understand, people didn't recognize, and I feel for uh, those those young men and some women that returned to a society that didn't appreciate their service, and there was a lot of angst and trauma uh, experienced by uh, people in that situation,
Mm,
which didn't quite wasn't quite the same if you return to a military environment.
mm, yeah. So, um, do you ever talk about your experience openly with family or friends after you return home, or was it something that you kept private for a while?
Uh, Another good question. No, I personally didn't talk too much about it. Uh, there were uh, there were times with the fellow soldiers you might remember a certain action, uh, but no, I personally didn't dwell too much on individual stories. It was just part of the past.
Part of the past. Yeah, that's so nice. Um, so you say there was a lot of angst and trauma experienced by, people in the situation within quite a sense you returned from military. So how did you handle that, like
Um,
personally?
Again, if you remain in the military, you were associated with people
Hmm.
who uh, had oftentimes served, and there was um, there was a understanding and a recognition of just by looking at the uniform and the
Mm,
patches, what unit you served with, what you did, how well you did it. That could all be seen, but it was invisible again to the young men and women who returned to their hometowns and went back to office jobs or service jobs or whatever they were doing. It was just uh, hidden, unrecognized, and I've talked to a couple of friends who told me that when they returned, they never even mentioned it to anybody,
mm,
that they were in the service or had served in Vietnam. So that's a whole different personal situation that I can only begin to appreciate and understand.
yeah, thank you so much. So do you use YouTube or like do you watch anything online right now? Or you just read newspapers?
Well, I brought the Washington Post with me, so yes, I do read newspapers, and
Yeah.
I do catch the news. But frankly, no, I guess I'm of the generation that doesn't use TikTok.
Yeah, so
Uh,
yeah.
I use YouTube and so on, but no, I do not get. I can honestly say I don't get anything from social media.
Yeah. Yeah. So, if
But then
you,
I'm
oh,
80 years old and you're
mhm,
not.
yeah, I'm just, yeah, I looked through it because like if not social media, so if you could sit with a high school student or college student today and talk to them, you have one thing to tell them about the world, but you will not find them in textbook, what would it be?
Wow.
Yeah.
Uh, well, there's no easy answer to that question
Hmm.
because there's no easy answer to um, describing that war or any war.
Hmm.
And it's a textbook view is often just a analytical, black and white, in print, uh, historical summary of events. And the experience of war is all personal.
Mm.
And there are as the American experience. There's 2.8 million experiences that people bring home. Um, so reading, for example, reading about December 7th, 1941, the Empire of Japan attacking the Hawaiian Islands, Pearl Harbor. Reading about it in a historical concept gives you one perspective of what that day was like, but talking to a survivor is far different.
So yeah, um, I want to like go back to a little bit about the pre-war experience. So I wonder like, how did your like family and peers react when you were going, or what was the public and political environment like when you were drafted? Is it like, is there any waves, or it's just like peaceful going or something?
Um, okay, first of all, there's nothing wrong with using the term drafted. There were many young men drafted during that period. I was part of an ROTC program, so I knew I had a commitment. But I was out of the country for most of the period of the contact or the conduct of the Vietnam War, specifically out of the country from '66 to '73, except for a 1 year break. But yeah, there were demonstrations against the war, and there were riots, and people left for Canada. People burned draft cards. So there was a groundswell of anti-war activity all the way through the country.
Other country. Yeah, that was what I find really interesting as well, because I grew up in my country. I learned about the war, but I've never heard of the thing that the United States has anti-war like movement here in the United States, which is like really interesting to me when I come here and I talk to a professor and he say there used to be a big anti-war movement here. So it's really struck me about it. So yeah.
That's interesting. Yes, the American society was very split about the conduct of the war, and certainly at the time there was a feeling in many people that if you were anti-war, you weren't really an American. And as the years have gone by, I think there's been a recognition that the anti-war peace movement was a strong reason why America's withdrawal took place, and how we have reflected again on the idea of war since then.
Yeah. Um,
And
so
I think in your study, you know, and mentioned Stephen Warner, and he was a good example of a principled young man who demonstrated against the war, was drafted out of Yale Law School, went to Vietnam, and instead of living in an air conditioning office and writing press releases, went out and photographed life as it was in many units, and lost his life in an ambush. But Steve Warner was a committed anti-war soldier who served well and honorably.
Thank you. Yeah, he has some rich collections of letters and photograph and texts that I am taking time to read into, and there's a lot of insights into it as well. As valuable as I am talking to you right now, because it's like amazing. So what do you think of like right now when it is peace everywhere and we are trade partner and like it's like nothing happened? Like what do you think of it? like move
I,
on. Yeah.
what do I think? I think it's wonderful. There's
Mm,
been a reconciliation. Um, the Vietnamese people are strong, proud, hardworking people.
mm,
Um, there are issues between governments, but as far as the people go, um, U.S. forces are U.S. naval vessels are having ports of call in Vietnam. They're doing trade with Vietnam, um, tourism in Vietnam. And the shocking thing for people like me to understand is the great percentage of people in Vietnam who are not even alive during the war. And the war has been over
mm,
now for 50 years.
mm,
And for many people, like maybe even your mother and father, who were
mm,
not born
mm.
during the war.
Yeah.
So I've also heard and read that many Vietnamese, although the war with U.S. forces was a critical and difficult period, they had also been fighting the French and the Japanese
Mm,
and Chinese,
yeah.
and a long history
Mm,
of war. And the fact that now Vietnam is one country, uh, north and south, uh, is a unification. And although there are political differences, we can still coexist, be a trading partner.
mm,
And everything I've read about U.S. personnel returning, they find a welcoming country with no bitterness
mm,
and the ability to continue on with life.
yeah. So, what does remembrance mean to you now? Like, especially having helped design the memorial at Gettysburg.
Um, yeah, the remembrance now is reflecting on both Vietnamese and American lives that were lost,
Mm-hmm.
and the fact that so many people were cheated out of a good life, including the 14
Mm,
uh, members of the Gettysburg College community who lost their lives during that period of time.
yeah,
So it's a reflection on personally how lucky some of us were and how unlucky others were.
yeah. Um, so there's a beautiful quote that you shared about Archibald MacLeish, um,
Oh yes.
about like giving meaning to the deaths of those who were young, and I find it struck me like this is so beautiful. So what kind of meaning do you hope this generation find when learning about your experience and the quote that you shared?
Well, war has produced some some beautiful writing on the futility of war, and the trenches of World War One
Mhm.
brought much powerful uh, poetry and literature. And Archibald MacLeish's poem to the young dead soldiers, which he authored as the Librarian of Congress, as I recall, and delivered it on Veterans Day 1941,
Mhm.
which would have been November 11th, 1941, just barely a month before Pearl Harbor.
Mhm.
MacLeish lost his brother in France. And when he wrote that poem, it encapsulated exactly that small extract that the best way to honor those who've lost their lives in war is to remember them.
Mhm.
And Memorial Day is not the time to think about going to the beach or mattress sales, but it's a time to reflect here in the United States as to the losses. And as far as November the 11th goes, Veterans Day, and those many of those nations who suffered so greatly in World War One, it's a time to reflect on the horrific losses in the trenches of France and across the battlefields of Europe. But loss, the significance of young lives ended needlessly. That's the lesson that we should remember and learn.
Yeah. I know that in Washington D.C. they have a big like monument of the Vietnam War there. So that's really interesting because we have that all around Vietnam too. The
Yes.
monument and
Yeah.
so yeah.
And the Vietnam Memorial is unique
Mm,
in the fact that it is a wall of remembrance because there are over 58,000 names on it.
mm,
And it's not the glorification of the war, it's a recognition of the loss and the price of war.
yep. The recognition of the loss. Um, do you believe that? I know you shared that we could learn about the loss and understanding people's like contribution. So it can we truly learn from a war like Vietnam? And if so, how do we learn from it? And then it's like for younger generations in general in the future as well. Yeah.
Um, I think the lesson of any war
Mm,
is that you should avoid all avenues that lead to war until
mm,
it's absolutely necessary.
yeah.
And that means you use diplomacy, you try to come to some agreement before uh, you commit the lives of young women, young men and women of any nation. Uh, that should be the lesson. That should be the lesson.
Yeah. I agree with that. So yeah. Is there anything that people often misunderstand about veterans like yourself that you wish more people knew? Hmm. Yeah, I'm like kind of curious about that.
Yeah. And I think many people say at the end of May, Happy Memorial Day,
Mm,
and it's not a happy day. It's a day to reflect
yeah.
on losses, but
Yeah.
that message gets
Yes, totally.
diluted many times.
Yeah.
Diluted,
Yeah, into a day of like resting
of
and
going to the beach. Yeah.
going to the beach. Yeah. I really like your quote. You say these were not just soldiers, they were Gettysburg students like you, and taking classes, dating, studying late for exams. Some died just months after graduation, and we remember their deaths, but we forget their life. That's really struck me because we never know that the veterans, the soldiers, is actually us. It's just like young students and young people actually go in there and then fight in the war. So my personal thought on it shouldn't just happen at the beginning. So it's like we can like all experience the same life with each other. Yeah.
Well, what you just mentioned, the dedication of the Gettysburg Vietnam Memorial, which took place on
Mm,
November the 10th, the day before Veterans Day, November the 10th, 2018.
mm,
The memorial is very simple, um, 4x7 black granite slab with the names of 14 young men engraved on them.
mm,
And the plaque that sits beside it was placed there because to list a group of names, even with an impressive quote, sometimes doesn't bring home what that message is.
Mm,
And the small bronze plaque says, Do not view these names
mm,
engraved in cold black granite as indistinct figures from the distant past.
yeah.
A decade of conflict which raged generations before you were even born.
Yeah.
Look at them and see them as students just like yourselves, who lived, loved, and studied at this college, and then went off to serve their nation and died. And that's what the message of that memorial is.
Mm,
No glorification of any war,
mm,
but a recognition of the fact that these were young men, just like any young man or woman on
mm,
this campus,
yeah.
who put on a uniform and lost their life. And that's the sadness. That's what needs to be remembered. Their contribution, and that was the focus of it.
Yeah. Um, I think that's really wrap up our conversations. I'm really happy you sharing me those valuable experience. I hope that when I finish it, it will look okay. Yeah.
I'm sure it will. I enjoyed talking to you before the interview,
Mhm,
now, and appreciate what you're doing. And
mhm.
so continue on and do well.
Thank you. Is there any like last minute quote or last minute sentence you want to say to anyone who go into a website and watch your interview later? Yeah.
There you go. You said it best.
Thank you. So thank you everyone who watched this video. This is an interview that I did, my first one, but
Well, it was fun being here on the morning of the 1st of July,
mhm,
2025. Thank
2025.
you.
Oh yeah, it's the start of July. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's another thing we should remember that
Mhm.
162 years ago,
Ooh.
the Gettysburg campaign started, July 1st, 1863.
Oh really?
Yeah, so that's
Yeah.
162 years ago.
Exactly in this day.
You're right,
Yeah.
right. 3 days in July.
3 days in July.
Yeah. In fact, on the afternoon of the first day of July, Confederate forces pushed Union forces right through this campus.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
That was the past. Like really bad. Like but I feel like Gettysburg is so historical and it has such a historical vibe that everything is like still living. Like the memory is still living right
There
here.
you go.
Yeah.
There you go.
It's really good at capturing the historical moments here. So
It's all around us.
so around us. We go on a ghost tour and you see Lincoln. Yeah. All right.
Well,
Thank you
thank
so
you
much.
again.
Yeah.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
again.
Thank you.